What's up, YouTubiverse, YouTube people, folks tuning in on YouTube? It'd be weird if you were tuning in for somewhere else. YouTube's the only place that this is going. So, I'm rambling. Already, just starting, already rambling. Eric Bauer, High Definition Television. That's me. Got some content for y'all. I don't remember when the last video I uploaded, at least a month ago. And I know I teased future content that never materialized. Yeah, I don't know. Grand plans become unrealized aspirations. But with YouTube, it's not that deep. It's not that serious. Fuck. Do any of you watch this shit anymore? Yeah? Y'all still here? Okay. So there's a thread going on. I don't usually do thread responses, but I've been wanting to shoot a video, and the usual go-to what's been spinning or new pickups. Those are always fun, always easy. But I like this topic, and I've seen responses from Pat at Ground Zero Salem, Dennis at Analog Archives, Vinyl Richie. I was Lionel Richie. The Lionel Richie. Vinyl Richie, I think, was the first channel I saw with a response to this video. I don't even know who the original uploader is. Doesn't matter. There's a lot of responses. 5 albums I would never sell. This is a good topic because I go through a lot. Not a lot, but I go through purges. I think it's healthy. You acquire so much shit as record collectors that you run out of room. Really, you have things on your shelf for years that you don't pull down. I mean, once your collection breaks a certain amount, like if you have 40 records in your collection, it's not going to take you years to get back to some of those records. Well, maybe, but if it is, why do you have that record? But once your collection hits, the thousands, you're going to have albums on the shelf for years without being pulled. I don't have multiple thousands of records. I'm pretty sure I've hit and passed the 1,500 mark a few times. That's kind of like my sweet spot. Any more than that, I run out of room. My apartment's only so big. I live in fucking a very progressive Pacific Northwest, a very liberal Pacific Northwest city, I should say. Seattle. I've never hidden that I live in fucking Seattle. Anyway, that's for someone special. Spaces aren't huge out here. That's the point of what I'm saying. I don't live in an apartment, one of those these are little units for college kids to live in because they're never going to be there, and they only need 400 square feet of space. I have more room than that, but only so much for fucking, I'm already swearing a lot. Only so much room for ephemera, knickknacks, odds and ends, collections. I have a movie collection too. I have books. I collect books. I buy books still, analog books. Trade paperbacks, old style 80s paperbacks, hardbacks. I've got a lot of books. I've got a lot of comics, graphic novels. All that shit has to live somewhere. Cassettes. It's dumb. So I have to pare down every so often. And usually I try and challenge myself just to see how much I can pull from the stacks. So you have to question yourself. You have to question the importance of a record. Um, these, are, these are stupid dilemmas that only certain people have. Let's be real. This is, this is not a real problem. I don't have anybody to worry about having to organize this shit after I'm out of here. So it's like, whatever. Anyway, not a real problem, but it's a problem. I'm deviating, right? So 5 records I would never sell. Now, I tried looking at this a few ways, honestly. And I've heard it talked about in a few ways. One is just like, hey, these records don't monetarily make sense to sell because they're not really worth much, but they bang all day. My favorite interpretation of this, though, is obviously, I mean, as I would just assume for most people, comes down to a point of sentimentality. Um, I'm not going to go pick out like the 5 most expensive records in my collection and be like, I'm never going to sell these. Because honestly, the 5 most expensive records in my collection, I probably would sell if somebody offered me enough money for them. I don't have a lot of nostalgic or sentimental attachments to those records, even though they have accrued in value and worth. So the kids said worth, right? Why is it hard to say worth it or that was worth it? Everybody's just, it's now worth. It's so fucking idiotic these days. Anyway, again, deviating. So I approach this from like a nostalgic sense for most of these. And these aren't like my favorite records of all time. I love these records that I'm about to talk to you about. Not all of them are probably worth much. Worth something to me. That's why they're in my collection. That's why when I go through my shelves to pull records to sell over the course of the years, these have never ended up in that pile. And the first one that really struck me that made sense to talk about, there were a couple potentials for this one, but one of them I've talked about a lot, probably multiple videos at this point, not just on my channel but other channels too, I would guess. This one I'm sure I've talked about before also. I started buying records in like early 90s. It was cassettes before that, and I collected all through the 90s, and then as what happens with younger people, priorities change, and my priorities became very bad habits. I've got a frantic cat who thinks he absolutely has to have attention right now. Shut up. Go away. Go chill out. No, George, not the best time for this, buddy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true, but nope, that's not for you. Come on, relax. Go hang out with Henry. These are the conversations I have at night, by the way. I live alone. My partner lives alone as well. That's our preferred way of living. I need my personal space. I need alone time. But with these cats, you're never really alone, are you? Especially when they just talk to you randomly. He's very upset. Anyway, Madness the Bastard. I bought this record at a Madness the Bastard show at an old venue in Seattle that no longer exists called the Velvet Elvis. The first time I ever saw Madness the Bastard play live was on this occasion. I don't think I'd ever even heard Madness the Bastard before going to this show, and I don't remember the other bands. I remember it was a matinee on a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember it was summer. I bought a shirt, this LP, top loading. It is just a sticker on a black record sleeve. We've got the, somehow this insert has survived the fourth time. This was the shirt that I had. And even what's written here was on the shirt. You could hardly read it. It was like a, back in the day when like punks would buy, their own silk screens and screen their own patches, their own shirts. Wood, Eric Wood, Connell, all these guys, Kenyon, Barnes, Beatty, purveyors of the DIY aesthetic. They were all printing up their merch on their own. But I mean, look, you've got all the old tape. This was absolutely on my wall back in the day. It's falling apart like there. When I had other priorities, other not so savory priorities, the majority of my collection ended up getting purged. I lived in an apartment and I could no longer afford to live in that apartment, and I could no longer afford to do most things. I ended up almost homeless, going into recovery, and I purged just about everything I owned that wasn't like either like clothes. I kept a couple books. I kept like a handful of CDs, and I kept 3 records. This was one of those 3 records. So this has survived. Jesus Christ. So many different homes at this point. It's insane to even really try and fathom how much of the Seattle area this record's seen. Anyway, I've hung on to it all this time. It is still my favorite Man is the Bastard offering. This isn't so much about what's in the record, but I mean, we might as well show you. Man is the Bastard, Thoughtless, picture disc. I loved this. Cult 45, Casket, Commit, Coffin Mate, Underworld, Deviled Ham, Life Servers. That one's pretty good. Anyway, I've hung on to this record for, at this point, approaching 40 years nearly. 35 years. Crazy. Think about. I love this record. This record's responsible for a lot. This record, you could say that this record is responsible for me falling in love with power violence back in the day. You could say it's responsible for me falling in love with harsh noise. You could say it's responsible for me falling in love with ambient and drone music. This is all of those things. This record is responsible for helping me open my mind to music that is not so walled off and finite in its definitions of what it is. It's just awesome, and it means a lot to me. And the fact that I've still got it at this point, after, God, moments of almost not making it, here we are. So, the next thing I want to talk about is kind of a callback to that same era, really. Like, I haven't had this record that long, or as long as that. Like, this is an addition to the collection within like the last few years. I got this when I lived here. I've been here for almost 3 years. It's like 2 years ago, maybe. I don't remember, to be honest. It's Candlemass, Epicus, Dumicus, Metallicus, Black Dragon pressing. Sick. Peaceville just recently did a reissue that was true to the original art on the back, or at least the Black Dragon art on the back. I know some of the other earlier Peaceville represses of this record did not have this graphic on the back. They kind of altered it a little bit. Anyway, that doesn't matter. This is my favorite Candlemass record. I realize it's. I can fully acknowledge that it's like not really the best Candlemass record. Um, that's probably Nightfall, but this is the one I listen to the most. This record, I have a lot of memories about the Black Dragon label on there. This was in a bargain bin. It's perfect. Anyway, um, my best homie, my BFF for life. Um, he and I don't know, we probably really latched on this band around the same time. And we were getting into like, the typical Peaceville 3, early Anathema, like the Pentecost 3 era shit. My Dying Bride, first two albums from them, Turn Loose the Swans, As the Flower Withers, and Paradise Lost. Lost Paradise and as fucking Gothic. And this, popped up, of course, as it would. And, man, this record fueled some wild outings. We would post up in my apartment or his apartment, and we'd go through cases of beer, and we'd have these like 3-day benders, where we'd go out, we'd get more beer, we'd get more dope. We had like counters with like fucking Teeners and 8-balls and fucking cans and bottles, and maybe a mini keg or growler somewhere. Pizza boxes. So when you're on that kind of a diet, or when you're on that kind of a regimen of recreationals, pizza's about the most reliable food. You didn't have to go get it yourself. Ate a lot of pizza back then. Listened to a lot of fucking Epicus, Dumicus, Metallicus. And you might be thinking, you said 8-balls and Teeners. That's like typically, it's typically not something that, in someone into the doomy shit's gonna be fucking ingesting. You'd be right. But this just hit, man. It still does. It's got this production to it that like is so unique. It's even amongst Candlemass records. It's kind of like, to my ears, it's like Candlemass's fucking Orgasmatron. The Motorhead record produced by Bill Laswell. It has a weird, almost like, I want to say synthetic sound to it. What would be another good comparison? It's probably that Orgasmatron's probably the best thing I'm going to come up with. And they sound nothing musically alike, really. Like Candlemass does not sound like Motorhead, obviously. It's just that sound quality, and it's one of those sound qualities that you know when you hear. So anytime I pull this out, and it's what I think a lot of people would probably want to get rid of something that would trigger memories like that. But it reminds me of like back when, back when you're younger, man, and like you could party for the weekend and not have it like negatively impact you. Granted, very quickly it begins to negatively impact you if the weekend becomes the week and the week becomes the month. You know where I'm getting at with that. Anyway, and it just reminds me of hanging out with my best friend and just causing trouble and getting in trouble and running from trouble, and not caring. It's a little nostalgic for me. Candlemass, Epicus, Dumicus, Metallicus. This record from, I don't know, my first exposure to it far before those two. No, not those two. Sorry, Jesus Christ. Where's my brain? Before the Candlemass, excuse me. Not as early a acquisition as The Man is a Bastard, though, but shortly after, honestly. We would go record shopping. That was the thing we would do, even as punks, man, because records were cheap. CDs were expensive. Records were cheap. No major labels were really pressing vinyl when we first started buying it. There were a couple stores that we would go to, and we would go on the weekend. You know, we'd get out of school on Friday. We'd maybe go to a show Friday night. Some of us might crash over at a buddy's house, and we'd wake up the next morning, Saturday. And if we weren't at one of the other dudes' houses, we'd all meet up. And it wasn't all just dudes. You know, we'd have a fucking 5-seater car full of 7 to 8 people in it. And trust me, you find ways to fit more people than can sit in a car. Back then, anyway. And we'd drive out to the city, Seattle. We all lived on the east side. Back before it was fucking owned by Microsoft. When it was still kind of rural. We'd drive out to Seattle. And we had like a whole handful of record shops we'd try and hit. Some weeks it was different, but one of the mainstays that we'd always go to was a shop on Capitol Hill. It's an area in Seattle, the very very liberal Pacific Northwest city. Capitol Hill, a very liberal area within a very liberal city in Pacific Northwest. Anyway, record store called Fallout Records. That came to mind because I was flipping through fucking Instagram. And I saw a post of Tommy and Blaine of The Accused. Shout out Ground Zero Salem again, who watch his video on this topic as well. He talked about The Accused in his video. Anyway, there's a picture of Tommy and Blaine hanging out outside Fallout Records. It was there for years. I want to say it was owned by one of the dudes from the Mono Men, who were originally from Bellingham, if I remember correctly, and they were on that like estrus kick, where like kind of like I don't want to say not psychobilly, but like that like man's ruin sort of fucking drinking lots of alcohol, sounding kind of swampy, but also kind of rock and roll, kill a punk for rock and roll sort of vibe. Anyway, it's one of the owners of Fallout Records. It was just a fucking punk mecca. It wasn't a big store. They also sold skateboards. Anyhow, I found this there. And I didn't know anything about this band. I knew 1 or 2 other releases on the label, Maximum Voice. And I saw the cover, Ambush Lach. And then I saw the back. And at the time, I was really into, kind of weirdo shit like fucking Amoebics, Hiatus, Contrapater, Zygote, which was like the project after Amoebics. Those are big influences at that point in time. His Hair Was Gone. And I just kind of thought, okay, this looks German. It is German. But apparently there's a member of Rorschach. I didn't know about that until I had a second copy of this. I sent it out to Mike Seatown. He looked it up. Anyway, so international group, but mostly based out of Germany. Man, this record is a beast. I had no clue what it was going to sound like. It didn't sound like anything I thought it was going to sound like. It doesn't sound like Amoebics. If it sounds like anything that I listed there, it'd be like Contrapater. It sounds like a fucking jam band playing crust punk. There's a lot of like weirdo progressive elements. There's a moment where they, I don't know, like they appropriate riffs and integrate them into their own music. Every track on here is like an epic. Kevorkian Suicide Machine, Zebav. I don't even know if I pronounced that one right. Dumped Back in a Cell in Isolation, Always in Agony. That's a song title. That is a song title. Anyway, this record hit me immediately. It's a double LP, and dude, this was on my turntable. One of these 2 LPs was on my turntable constantly for like the first 2 weeks that I owned this record. I never took this thing off. I'd go upstairs, hang out with roomies, and spin other records up there. Go through a lot of 7 inches and shit like that. We would do this like smoking sessions where we post up in somebody's bedroom and just fucking cycling, line of people in and out of the room during the sesh. Well, just spinning records. Sometimes it was like Download, The Eyes of Stanley Payne. Sometimes it was this. Sometimes it was 7 inches. But this was on my turntable for like 2 weeks straight. It's kind of stony. They're earlier. They have a couple EPs, like 7 inches. I have both. There's a 10 inch that I need, and one LP that I still need. The 2000 LP, which I imagine sounds completely different than this, because the follow-up, which is an album called Pigs, sounds nothing like this. That's one of the rad things about this band is you can always tell it's Ambush, but no album sounds exactly like the album that came before it. It's almost Neurosis-y in that sort of aspect. Do they sound like Neurosis? Sometimes, but I wouldn't compare them to Neurosis. Just rad, man. And this was such a cool find back when, like, I hate to wax reminiscent. Is that even a phrase? Did I just wax nostalgically? How about that? Reminisce whiningly. Back before we had the internet, we had to find records on our own. Oh my gosh. And this was a blind buy. It wasn't expensive at the time that I bought it. It's not even really particularly expensive now if you find it. It's not common, but it doesn't cost a lot of money when you stumble across it, usually. And I think that's a cool kind of record, honestly. It's very of its time. I don't think I could never imagine a band like this popping up now. That'd be cool if one did. Yeah, this is just insanely good material. Love it. Love it. Hold up. Look at that. Backwards. Hopefully I can flip that. That's annoying. We're already like almost 30 minutes in. Yeah. That's cool. I got a new phone, so I'm playing with the camera. Jesus. I got 2 records left still. I'm sorry. I'm trying to go fast. Okay. This one I won't talk about for as long. Good friend of mine owns a record shop. And early on, after said record shop initially opened, I used to go there a lot. And every once in a while I help out organizing the back room. And we were just shooting the shit. And just doing some organization on some shelves for him. And there was a whole pocket of like metal shit. And a band that I love. 2 bands. Verathron, Necromantia. Do I love everything Necromantia has done? No. First 2 records are fucking great. Verathron's a little bit more on the nose for me. His Majesty at the Swamp, While Purges Knocked. 2 probably the best black metal records ever released. Anyway, I was on at the time too, like a really big Greek black metal kick. So there's a lot of Verathron, a lot of Rotting Christ, Zemiel, Tatir, like getting kind of obscure, more obscure. Nightfall was another one that I was really just like diving into. Anyway, stumbled across this. Necromantia, The Black Arts, split with Verathron, The Everlasting Sins. This is a reissue. Here's the bootleg reissue on fuck. There's the inner sleeve. Verathron side, Necromantia side. Who released this? It's gonna bother me. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Black Vomit Records, I think, out of Greece, which is appropriate because both these bands are from Greece. Ramble. Anyway, I didn't have this record. I'd never even heard this split. I knew it existed, but yeah, it just I never happened upon it. And he was like, initially when I started doing the shelving, he's like, if there's anything in there that you're interested in, just pull it out, set it aside, and let me know. We'll work something out. And dude is huge in the Greek black metal, and so I pulled this. It was the only thing I pulled, and talking about it, and I was like, dude, I've never heard it. I don't have it, and it's not a particularly valuable copy. Like originals are expensive, but this is like, given that it's kind of gray market, I think, in terms of its legitimacy. He's like, dude, honestly, you need it. Just take that record. So here we are. And this is honestly some of my favorite material by both of these bands. This is a fucking killer split. Absolutely just a stunner. 10 out of 10. Would I put the Verathron material next to like Walpurgis Knocked? That's a tough call. But I love this stuff, man. Very, very good. And yeah, just like a cool gesture. So I'm stoked to have it. And that's going to stay with me. And then the last one. I picked this one up. This is probably the most recent pickup, and that would have been like 2 years back. I got this from the first like little weekend getaway I took with my partner. Her and I went to Portland, visited some friends down there, and just hung out and ate a lot of good food, and did mushrooms. Yeah, it's a good time. But we went to a couple of different record shops, and one of the reasons why, just because it's not just nostalgia because of the record. Like, the record rules. I love it. But it's just, it's sentimental because I can think about that trip when I think about this record. And think about what we did on that trip. And the fact that, like, we were still doing shit like that is pretty cool. And she found this one. She pulled it. She looked at the shit that was inside of it. I was like, hey, this looks like something you would be into. And yeah, I've got some of, I've got a few of their other releases here at the pad. Never seen this one in the wild. The Apostles. This is the Acts of the Apostles in the Theater of Fear. First of all, typical awesome Apostles cover art. Right there. It's a comic strip. Done by the only mainstay of the band, Andy Martin. He did most of the art for the Apostles. And there's the back, which is just like fucking psychedelic, trippy epicness. Now, the Apostles sometimes played anarcho-punk. Sometimes they played a weird, like, militaristic type of, like, apocalyptic folk mixed with anarcho-punk. Sometimes they played rock and roll. They have a lot of material. One of the things they were known for was doing their own artwork. This is artwork for every song title on the album right here. And it's all, like, super cool. Here's that. Inside. There's, like, a long rant in here written by Andy Martin. And here we have fucking lyrics. Both sides. The Apostles were really polarizing, man. Like, some of the material is absolutely stellar. I don't love everything they did. Some of what they did is, like, close to unlistenable. And Andy Martin himself is probably one of the most interesting characters in UK punk rock, like sort of UK anarcho-punk specifically, like super queer, occasionally problematic. His politics were known for shifting on a dime. This record is very pro-queer, very pro-people of color, very anti-proletariat, anti-military, anti-cop, anti-Margaret Thatcher, as you can kind of get in this vein. One of the things that's just super cool about these guys is like their ability to be so many things at once. And you have to at least respect the experimentation, if not every record that works out. All the records I have by them, bangers, this one included. And it's just super cool that my partner knew me well enough to just pull this out of a stack blindly, not knowing anything about it, and say, hey, you might dig this, and I already did. What are the odds? Anyway, the Apostles, this record's awesome, and because of that memory, it's mine. I'm not going to get rid of it. Yeah. Sorry, we went a bit long with this one. 35 minutes. I'm done. I've got nothing more to say about these guys. Hopefully you watch. Hopefully you find something interesting. Comment down below. Engage me in some conversation, y'all. That's why I still do this. That last video, like 4 comments. Like, dude. Okay. I don't know what I talked about, but apparently y'all didn't find it very interesting. Doesn't matter. Anyway, this record's awesome. Everything here that I showed today is awesome. I hope you take some time to peep some of this stuff, or none of this stuff, but at least talk to me about it. Keep it real. Be cool to yourselves and everybody else that you run into. Just don't be shitty. Later. Oh, well, later. How about now?